The night was cloaked in darkness, punctuated only by the relentless drizzle that lashed against the windshield. The road ahead was slick, reflecting the kaleidoscope of streetlights in shimmering, distorted patterns. 15-year-old Elise Marlowe sat nervously in the back seat, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater, eyes darting to the road and back to the family around her. Laughter and chatter filled the car, a stark contrast to the ominous storm outside. Her parents, warm and attentive, exchanged smiles with their two younger siblings, whose exuberant energy seemed to defy the gloomy weather. It was a night meant for joy, a celebration of togetherness after a long day spent away from home. Without warning, the tranquility shattered. The screech of tires on wet asphalt pierced the air, a desperate cry for control that went unanswered. Time seemed to slow as the car swerved violently into the opposing lane, headlights blinding in their intensity. Elisa's heart pounded in her chest, each beat a frantic drum echoing the impending doom. The impact was brutal and immediate. Metal twisted unnaturally, glass exploded in a shower of glittering fragments, and the car flipped violently through the air, a grotesque ballet of destruction. Inside, chaos reigned. Elisa's parents struggled against the relentless force, hands gripping the steering wheel in futile attempts to regain control. Her siblings clung to each other, their wide eyes reflecting terror and confusion. Elisa's world narrowed to a singular point of horror. She watched, paralyzed by fear, as the car collided with a tree, the sound of crunching metal reverberating through her very being. Her parents' faces contorted in pain, her siblings' cries muffled by the roaring wind and collapsing roof. The car ground to a halt, the aftermath a twisted mess of twisted steel and shattered lives. Trapped within the mangled wreckage, Elise remained conscious but utterly immobile. Her body felt heavy, bound by the remnants of the car that now served as a prison. She reached out, desperate to touch her parents and siblings, to pull them back to safety, but her limbs refused to obey. Helplessness engulfed her, a suffocating blanket that smothered any hope of rescue. Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity as the storm raged on outside, indifferent to the tragedy unfolding within the car. The distant wail of sirens provided little solace, their arrival too delayed to make a difference. By the time paramedics arrived, the damage was irrevocable. Elisa's parents had succumbed to their injuries, their lives extinguished in the cruel instant of impact. Her younger brother and sister lay unconscious, their breaths shallow, their futures forever altered. As the paramedics worked to free her, Elisa's anguish erupted into screams of frustration and helplessness. She watched in horror as they focused solely on her, their actions mechanical, their efforts futile in the face of her family's demise. Her mother's voice, weak and pleading, echoed in her mind, "Stay strong, Elise. Don't give up." But it was too late. A haunting silence settled over the wreckage, the finality of loss settling in with an unrelenting grip. In the aftermath, Elise was left alone with the haunting images of that night, the blood-stained seat, the scattered shards of glass that seemed to shimmer with the ghosts of her family's final moments. She was alive, but her survival felt like a cruel mockery. The burden of her self-imposed failure loomed over her, its gravity pulling her deeper into despair, a relentless reminder of the lives she couldn't save. From that night forward, Elisa's path was irrevocably altered. The scars of loss and guilt became the foundation upon which she built her life, driving her to dedicate herself to medical advancements. She vowed that no one else would ever have to endure the helplessness and sorrow that had defined her adolescence. This single, devastating night became the catalyst for Elisa's relentless pursuit of innovation, a quest to turn her deepest pain into a beacon of hope for others. If you are just joining us for the first time, welcome to Haunted Horror Whisperer, where every whisper tells a story and every story chills the soul. If you crave spine-tingling tales and eerie mysteries, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a fright. Like this video if you dare, and share your own ghostly encounters in the comments below. Now, let's begin. Decades had passed since that fateful night, yet the shadows of the past lingered in every step Elise Marlowe took. Now in her early 30s, Dr. Marlowe stood as a paragon of scientific brilliance, her high-tech laboratory a demonstration of years of unwavering dedication and unyielding ambition. The lab was a sanctuary of glassware and gleaming instruments, each meticulously arranged to support her groundbreaking research. Elise moved with a purpose that bordered on obsession, her sharp features illuminated by the soft glow of monitors displaying intricate data streams. Her mind, honed by years of relentless pursuit, danced with ideas and equations, each one a step closer to her ultimate goal, saving lives where traditional medicine had faltered. But brilliance often attracts both admiration and envy. In the sleek, modern corridors of the research facility, Dr. Sophie Voss loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon. Sophie's reputation was formidable, an accomplished scientist in her own right, her methods equally unorthodox but her ambitions just as towering. Their professional rivalry was a well-kept secret, a silent war waged through competitive projects and subtle undermining. Elisa's interactions with Sophie were tense, each meeting a battleground where words were chosen like weapons. Sophie's calculated smiles and veiled criticisms masked her true intent, to overshadow Elisa's work and claim the spotlight for herself. The pressure was evident, a constant undercurrent that threatened to erode Elisa's determination. Amidst this storm of competition stood Dr. Marcus Lynn, Elisa's closest confidant and unwavering support. Marcus was the calm to Elisa's storm, his quiet wisdom and steady presence a balm to her fraying nerves. Together, they navigated the treacherous waters of scientific discovery, their partnership a delicate balance of mutual respect and shared ambition. And then there was Miriam, the diligent security guard whose watchful eyes missed nothing. Miriam's presence was a quiet reassurance, her role often overlooked but essential to the smooth operation of the lab. Her interactions with Elise were few but meaningful, a reminder of the human connections that tethered Elise to a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos of her work. In this high-stakes environment, every day was a battle against skepticism and doubt. Elisa's colleagues watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension as she pushed the boundaries of textile science, her innovations a double-edged sword that promised both salvation and unforeseen consequences. The looming threat of losing funding cast a shadow over her every endeavor, each experiment a gamble with potentially life-saving rewards or devastating failures. As the days turned into nights, Elisa's determination only deepened. She poured herself into her work with an intensity fueled by the ghosts of her past, each breakthrough a step toward redemption. Yet, the pressure mounted, the expectations higher, and the boundary between unyielding ambition and self-destruction started to dissolve. In the heart of Elisa's relentless pursuit lay her most ambitious project yet, Thread Skin. The name itself was a whisper of revolution, a promise woven into every strand of biosynthetic fiber. Derived from a rare and enigmatic fungus that thrived in the most inhospitable environments, thread skin was more than just a material, it was a marvel of biological engineering. Under Elisa's skilled hands, the fibers shimmered with an almost ethereal luminescence, their structure intricate and endlessly complex. Microscopically, they resembled a delicate lattice of impossibly fine threads, each one a conduit for potential breakthroughs in medical science. Thread skin was designed to be self-repairing, responsive to stress, and seamlessly integrated with human tissue, a material that could mend wounds without needles, adapt to the wearer's movements, and even repair itself from within. The implications were staggering. Elise envisioned sutures that could heal instantly, fabrics that could monitor and adjust to the body's needs, and even applications in regenerative medicine where tissue could be repaired at the cellular level. Thread skin held the key to a new era of medical advancement, a beacon of hope born from the ashes of her own personal tragedy. But innovation is often met with skepticism. Within the sterile walls of the lab, whispers of doubt echoed through the corridors. Colleagues watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension, their skepticism a stark contrast to Elisa's unbridled enthusiasm. The potential applications of thread skin were undeniable, yet the unknown variables posed significant risks. Investors grew restless, their patience thinning as funding sources began to wane under the weight of uncertainty. Amidst this mounting pressure, Sophie Voss seized every opportunity to undermine Elise's progress. Her manipulative tactics were subtle yet effective: unscheduled lab audits, pointed questions during meetings, and strategic leaks to senior management that cast shadows of doubt over Threadskin's viability. Sophie's actions were calculated, designed to accelerate the pressure Elise faced, pushing her to the brink of desperation. Elise found herself at a crossroads, the stakes higher than ever. The promise of Threadskin beckoned with the allure of redemption, yet the path to its realization was fraught with peril. The looming threat of losing funding was a constant reminder of the fragile balance between success and failure, each day a battle against the encroaching doubt that threatened to unravel her life's work. In the midst of this turmoil, the pressure became unbearable. Elise's sleep was plagued by dreams of twisted fibers and distorted faces, her waking hours consumed by the relentless drive to push Threadskin to its limits. As she plunged further into her research, the boundary between day and night dissolved, leaving her suspended in a perpetual twilight, her obsession fueled by the memory of a family lost and the desperate need to save others from the same fate. And so, with each passing moment, the tension mounted, the stakes climbing higher. Elise stood on the precipice of a breakthrough that could change the world, yet the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, the consequences of her ambition teetering between salvation and catastrophe. The lab was quiet, the hum of machinery the only sound in the sterile, brightly lit space. The pressure of impending deadlines weighed heavily on Elise's shoulders, each tick of the clock a reminder of the fleeting time to prove Threadskin's worth. Exhaustion etched lines into her face, but her eyes burned with a fervent determination that refused to wane. In the solitude of her workspace, Elise stood before a pristine glass panel, a small cut on her forearm a quiet beacon of the potential of her creation. The wound was minor, a mere scratch from a stray piece of equipment, yet to most, it was insignificant. To Elise, it was an opportunity, a chance to witness the culmination of years of relentless research and unwavering dedication. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the vial of Threadskin, the biosynthetic fiber glistening with an otherworldly sheen. The moment felt surreal, a blend of anticipation and apprehension swirling within her. She glanced at Marcus, whose concerned eyes met hers with silent encouragement, but Elise knew that the decision rested solely on her shoulders. With a deep breath, she carefully applied the Threadskin directly onto the cut. The fiber responded immediately, spreading across the wound with an almost sentient grace. The edges of the injury knit together seamlessly, the healing process swift and flawless. Elise watched in awe as the cut closed within minutes, the fiber seamlessly integrating with her skin as if it had always belonged there. A surge of euphoria washed over her, a heady mix of triumph and relief that left her breathless. It was as though the fiber had fused with her at the very molecular level, bridging the gap between science and the intangible realm of the miraculous. This was the breakthrough she had envisioned, a material that could redefine medical science and offer new hope to countless lives. But beneath the surface of this immediate success, subtle changes began to emerge. Faint thread-like marks appeared beneath her skin, delicate patterns that caught the light in peculiar ways. To Elise, they were minor imperfections, the byproduct of a process too swift to leave flawless results. Yet, even in her exhilaration, a nagging sense of unease lingered at the edges of her consciousness. As she stood there, marveling at the seamless healing, Elise couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Threadskin had proven its efficacy, but the first thread marks were a silent harbinger of the deeper integration that awaited her. The fiber had bonded with her body, but what did that mean for her future? What unforeseen consequences lay hidden beneath the surface of her triumphant discovery? Elise took a moment to gaze at her healed arm in the mirror, the faint threads beneath her skin shimmering subtly in the lab's ambient light. Her reflection stared back at her, a blend of hope and uncertainty. The journey ahead was fraught with unknowns, but for now, the success of her first test was a beacon of light in the darkness of her past. As she turned away from the mirror, the first thread marks fading into the background, Elise couldn't help but feel that the true test of Threadskin was yet to come. The fiber had woven itself into her very being, and the path forward was a tangled web of promise and peril, where the divide between salvation and damnation was as fragile as a single, trembling thread. Elisa's triumph was a fleeting moment of victory, a beacon of hope that illuminated the shadows of her past and the unknown future that lay ahead. As she gazed at her healed arm, the faint threads beneath her skin whispered of possibilities yet unexplored, of a destiny intertwined with the very fabric of her creation. But with every thread that bound her closer to thread skin, the boundaries between ambition and obsession blurred, setting the stage for a descent into a world where the pursuit of salvation would lead her into the depths of horror and transformation. The journey had only just begun, and the true nature of thread skin was poised to reveal itself in ways Elise could never have imagined. With a final, lingering look at her reflection, Elise turned away, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The path forward was uncertain, the stakes higher than ever, and the threads of destiny were already weaving their intricate patterns into the tapestry of her life. The stage was set, the players in motion, and the haunting tale of thread skin was poised to unfold. Days turned into weeks, and Elise Marlowe's life became a relentless pursuit of perfection within the sterile confines of her high-tech lab. The brilliance that once illuminated her every step now cast long, shadowy silhouettes as she immersed herself into the mysteries of thread skin. Yet, beneath the surface of her groundbreaking work, subtle changes began to manifest, whispers of an impending transformation that Elise struggled to comprehend. One crisp morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the lab's expansive windows, Elise caught a fleeting glimpse of something unusual. Her reflection in the polished glass panel revealed faint, thread-like marks tracing intricate patterns beneath her skin. At first, they were barely noticeable, delicate lines that seemed to shimmer softly under the ambient light. Elise dismissed them as mere scars, remnants of her rigorous experiments, convincing herself that her body's resilience was simply an ultimate proof to threadskin's efficacy. But as days melded into nights, the markings grew more pronounced, weaving themselves into elaborate designs that danced across her arms and neck. Each thread seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, intertwining with her natural biology in ways that defied conventional understanding. Elise touched her skin absent-mindedly, feeling the subtle undulations and movements beneath her flesh. It was as if invisible hands were guiding her limbs, gently tugging and shaping her movements with an eerie, unseen force. These phantom sensations became a constant presence in Elisa's daily routine. During late-night experiments, she would feel her fingers being delicately guided to manipulate delicate instruments, her arms moving with a precision that surpassed her conscious control. It was unsettling, each motion felt both familiar and foreign, a silent collaboration with an entity she couldn't see or understand. The once comforting hum of machinery now seemed to resonate with an otherworldly frequency, the threads beneath her skin responding to the lab's electromagnetic pulses in a symbiotic dance. Elisa's mind, sharp and analytical, struggled to rationalize the inexplicable phenomena unfolding within her body. The boundary between her own agency and the subtle manipulations of thread skin blurred, leaving her teetering on the brink of obsession. As the physical changes became more pronounced, so too did the toll on Elisa's psyche. Her once vibrant interactions with colleagues dwindled, replaced by an all-consuming focus that isolated her from the world outside her lab. The late nights stretched into early mornings, meals skipped in favor of endless hours of research and experimentation. Fatigue etched deep lines into her face, her once bright eyes now clouded with sleeplessness and mounting pressure. Dr. Marcus Lynn, Elisa's steadfast lab partner, watched with growing concern as his friend slipped further into her work-induced trance. Marcus's attempts to reach out were met with dismissive waves and terse responses. "I'm fine, Marcus. Just need to push a little harder," Elise would say, her voice tinged with desperation and an unspoken fear. The bond they once shared, built on mutual respect and camaraderie, began to fray under the strain of Elisa's obsession. Meanwhile, Dr. Sophie Voss, ever the opportunist, seized every chance to undermine Elisa's progress. Her manipulative tactics became more aggressive, orchestrating unscheduled lab audits and questioning the safety protocols with calculated precision. Each audit was a calculated move to escalate the pressure Elise faced, forcing her to take greater risks and cut corners in her experiments. Sophie's relentless pursuit of supremacy cast a dark shadow over the lab, heightening the stakes and intensifying Elise's internal turmoil. The tension in the lab was noticeable, a suffocating atmosphere that weighed heavily on Elise's shoulders. The once collaborative environment now crackled with unspoken animosity and competitive fervor. Elise's determination to succeed, fueled by her haunting past, drove her to the edge of exhaustion, her every waking moment consumed by the quest to perfect thread skin. Amidst this maelstrom of pressure and isolation, Miriam, the diligent security guard, found herself drawn into the escalating drama. Her nightly rounds became a silent witness to Elise's transformation, her presence a silent guardian amidst the chaos. Unbeknownst to Elise, Miriam's curiosity and growing concern would soon propel her into the heart of the unraveling horror. One stormy night, the lab was enveloped in an unsettling silence, broken only by the rhythmic drip of rain against the reinforced glass. The corridors, usually bustling with activity, lay deserted under the watchful gaze of the security cameras. Miriam, ever vigilant, made her routine check, her footsteps echoing softly in the empty halls. As she approached the heart of the lab, a faint, ethereal glow emanated from the main workstations. Drawn by an inexplicable compulsion, Miriam stepped into the room, her eyes widening in disbelief. There stood Elise, her figure almost otherworldly in the dim light, fingers deftly weaving thin, shimmering threads from her fingertips onto a piece of lab equipment. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, threads of thread skin danced and twirled, seemingly guided by an unseen force. Miriam's breath caught in her throat, a mixture of fear and confusion gripping her heart. "Elise," she whispered, her voice trembling as she took a tentative step forward. Elise looked up, her eyes glazed and distant, the threads intertwining with her skin reflecting an unnatural luminescence. "Miriam," Elise replied, her voice hollow and devoid of its usual warmth. "I need to finish this. It's important." But Miriam sensed the danger lurking beneath the surface of Elise's determined facade. The subtle movements of the threads, the eerie glow beneath her skin, all pointed to something far more sinister than mere scientific dedication. Compelled by a sense of duty and an innate empathy, Miriam couldn't turn away. "You don't have to do this alone," she urged, reaching out a hesitant hand. Elise shook her head slowly, the threads responding with a gentle, almost imperceptible pull. "I have to save them," she murmured, her gaze distant, lost in memories that seemed to claw at her sanity. The fibers beneath her skin shimmered, reflecting the fragmented emotions that tore at her from within. Miriam pressed forward, her will solidifying as she closed the distance. "Let us help you," she pleaded, the weight of Elise's isolation bearing down on her. But Elise's eyes flickered with a blend of fear and desperation, a silent plea that spoke of the darkness enveloping her soul. In that moment, the threads surged with a life of their own, coiling around Elise's arms and neck, binding her to the lab equipment with an unyielding grip. Miriam recoiled in horror, the realization dawning upon her that the very invention meant to save lives was now threatening to consume its creator. As the threads tightened, Elise's facade cracked, revealing the raw agony beneath. "Please," she whispered, tears mingling with the threads that now adorned her skin, "I can't do this alone." With a final, desperate tug, Miriam broke free from the encroaching threads, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew that Elise was spiraling into a nightmare, and it was up to her to uncover the truth behind the haunting transformation. The encounter left Miriam shaken, her determination to aid Elise grew unyielding, even as the creeping terror cast its shadow over them both. Elise stood alone in the center of the lab, her body encased in a shimmering web of thread-skin threads. The fibers coiled and intertwined around her limbs, binding her to the very fabric of her creation. Her eyes, once filled with determination, now shimmered with panic and despair as she struggled against the inescapable cocoon. "What's happening to me?" she cried out, her voice echoing through the empty corridors. The threads responded, tightening their grip, their luminescent glow casting eerie shadows across the room. Her movements became increasingly frantic, limbs jerking and twisting against the constricting fibers. Each attempt to break free only seemed to strengthen the weave, the threads moving with a sinister intelligence that defied her every effort. The once empowering thread skin had transformed into a parasitic entity, consuming her autonomy and weaving her into its insidious design. As Elisa's struggle intensified, the room seemed to close in around her, the threads pulsating with a life force that drew her deeper into their embrace. Her breaths grew shallow, each inhale a battle against the suffocating bonds that threatened to unravel her very essence. In a final, desperate act of defiance, Elise sank to her knees, her hands clawing at the threads that now enveloped her entire body. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the luminescent fibers that clung to her skin. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the relentless tightening of the weave. "I won't let you control me." But the threads responded with an unwavering will, their grip unyielding as they continued to weave her into the very fabric of thread skin. The once visionary scientist found herself ensnared in a nightmare of her own creation, the boundaries between protector and predator faded, merging into a single, unrecognizable form. As the lab's lights flickered and the storm raged outside, Elisa's cries of anguish and resistance echoed through the space, a haunting reflection of her struggle against the very technology meant to save lives. The cocoon tightened, the threads pulsing with a dark energy, and Elisa's fate became irrevocably entwined with the sinister weave of thread skin. Elisa's descent into the cocoon marked the beginning of a transformation that would erase the boundary between humanity and monstrosity. As the threads wove her deeper into their insidious design, the true horror of thread skin began to unfurl, setting the stage for a descent into a nightmarish realm where the very fabric of her being was at stake. The unraveling had only just begun, and the threads of destiny were poised to ensnare her in ways she could never have imagined. As days melded into nights, Elise Marlowe's transformation deepened, the subtle threads beneath her skin evolving into a nightmarish symbiosis. Her skeletal structure began to reinforce with the very fibers she had so meticulously crafted. Each bone seemed to merge with the thread skin, the threads weaving through her joints like dark, pulsating veins, granting her an unnatural strength that both awed and terrified her. Elisa's skin underwent a harrowing metamorphosis, hardening to a texture that resembled polished marble, yet remained unsettlingly translucent. Beneath the surface, the threads glowed with an eerie luminescence, casting ghostly shadows that danced across her hardened flesh. The transformation was grotesque, each fiber embedding itself deeper, intertwining with her very essence. Her hair, once flowing and vibrant, now transformed into a cascade of fibrous tendrils that writhed and twisted with a life of their own. The strands moved independently, twitching like serpentine appendages that seemed to sense the environment around her. They swayed and coiled, reacting to her slightest movements with a sinister grace. Elisa's movements became increasingly erratic, her limbs jerking and twisting in ways that defied her conscious control. Her once fluid motions now bore the rigidity of a marionette, each step calculated yet mechanical. The threads beneath her skin shimmered with a spectral glow, illuminating her in human form with an unsettling radiance. In the dimly lit lab, Elisa's reflection in the glass was a horrifying tableau of human and fiber entwined. Her eyes, once bright with determination, now glinted with a haunted intensity, reflecting the monstrous transformation that had consumed her. The threads pulsed rhythmically beneath her skin, a constant reminder of the invasive presence that had taken hold of her body. With each passing day, Elisa's grip on reality began to slip, her mind fraying under the relentless pressure of her transformation. Nightmares plagued her restless sleep, vivid and grotesque visions distorting the line between dream and waking horror. In these dreams, her siblings appeared, their bodies covered in the same fibrous patterns that marred her own skin. Their eyes, once filled with innocence, now gleamed with a desperate plea for help. In these haunting nocturnal visions, Elise watched as her siblings stood before her, their forms distorted and grotesque. They reached out with trembling hands, their voices echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "Help us, Elise," they cried, their voices intertwining with the soft, insistent whispers of the threads that now bound them. Join the weave. Let us be whole again. But these visions were not mere figments of her imagination. The whispers persisted into her waking hours, insidious and relentless, threading their way into the recesses of her mind. The soft murmurs of her family, distorted and warped, urged her to embrace the fiber's embrace, to become one with the weave. Join us, they whispered, their voices a haunting lullaby that sought to lull her into submission. Elisa's reality became a fragile tapestry, the threads of her sanity interwoven with the invasive influence of thread skin. Her thoughts grew muddled, oscillating between moments of clarity and episodes of intense paranoia. She found herself questioning the motives of those around her trust eroding under the weight of the fiber's manipulative whispers. Isolation became her constant companion, the once vibrant interactions with Marcus and Miriam now strained and superficial. Elise withdrew further into her work, the lab transforming into a solitary chamber where her only company were the pulsating threads beneath her skin and the incessant whispers that sought to claim her mind. In the depths of her deteriorating psyche, the fiber's manipulation reached a crescendo, weaving elaborate illusions that promised false redemption. Elise began to experience visions of her family, not as victims of tragedy, but as beings transformed and healed by thread skin. These apparitions stood before her, their forms perfect and unmarred by the chaos of that fateful night. The fiber conjured scenes of her family, their eyes radiant and smiles genuine, extolling the virtues of the weave. Elise, they sang in harmonious unison, you did it. You saved us. Embrace the weave, and we will be together forever. The illusions were so vivid, so overwhelmingly real, that Elise found herself teetering on the brink of belief. The fiber exploited her deepest longing for redemption, her yearning to save humanity from losing their loved ones. It whispered promises of unity and eternal togetherness, painting a picture of a world where her family's suffering was erased, replaced by an idyllic existence woven into the very fabric of thread skin. Let us complete the weave, the voices urged, their tones soothing yet insistent. Elisa's internal struggle intensified as the fiber's manipulative visions battled against her lingering sense of self. She grappled with the allure of the false redemption offered by the weave, torn between her rational mind and the invasive whispers that sought to claim her. The emotional turmoil became unbearable, her determination splintered under the relentless grip of the fiber's influence. In a climactic moment of vulnerability, Elise succumbed to the fiber's manipulation. Overwhelmed by the desperate pleas of her imagined family, she began to weave the lab into a grotesque cocoon, believing she was creating a vessel for their return. Threads spread across surfaces and equipment, transforming the once sterile environment into a labyrinth of fibrous tendrils that pulsated with dark energy. As the fiber tightened its grip, Elisa's vision blurred, the hallucinations of her family becoming more intense and lifelike. Their laughter echoed through the lab, a haunting symphony that seemed to come from both within and without. The fibers constricted around her, weaving her into the very heart of thread skin, as she teetered on the edge of complete submission. But in the depths of her despair, a flicker of clarity pierced through the illusion. Elise saw through the facade, her family's forms flickering and distorting, revealing the monstrous constructs beneath. The whispers turned frantic, pleading and begging for her to continue the weave, but Elisa's newfound rage surged forth, a fierce determination to resist the fiber's insidious hold. Fueled by a surge of defiance, Elise broke free from the cocoon, the threads recoiling in pain and anger. Her heart pounded with a renewed sense of purpose, the false redemption shattered by the horrifying truth of the fiber's manipulation. The revelation ignited a fierce determination within her, an unyielding drive to reclaim her autonomy and dismantle the creation that had threatened to devour her. Elise stood amidst the remnants of her lab, the fibrous threads now recoiling like wounded serpents. The illusions had been dispelled, leaving behind only the raw reality of her transformation and the sinister presence of thread skin. Her tenacity solidified, burning with the intensity of her rage and the clarity of her purpose. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but Elise was no longer the guilt-ridden scientist she once was. She had glimpsed the true nature of the fiber, and the battle for her very soul had only just begun. With a steely determination, Elise set her sights on uncovering the fiber's origins and devising a way to sever its hold. The revelation of its sentient, hive-minded nature propelled her into a desperate quest for redemption, not just for herself, but for the world that teetered on the brink of being woven into the fiber's dark design. The true horror of thread skin was now fully unveiled, and Elise's journey was poised to descend into the depths of body and mind, where the battle between human will and parasitic control would reach its terrifying climax. Elise stood alone in the dimly lit corner of her lab, the air thick with the sterile scent of chemicals and the faint, metallic tang of blood from previous experiments. Her eyes were fixed intently on the microscopic slide before her, the intricate patterns of thread skin revealing their true nature under the powerful magnification. What had once been a marvel of synthetic biology now revealed itself as something far more sinister. The fibers twisted and intertwined with a complexity that defied conventional understanding. As Elise adjusted the focus, her breath caught in her throat. The microscopic view unveiled a network of fungal hyphae, interconnected and pulsating with an eerie, almost sentient rhythm. These were no ordinary threads, they were living, breathing entities, each filament acting in concert with the others, forming a collective intelligence that thrived on assimilation and expansion. Her mind raced as she connected the dots. Thread skin wasn't just a revolutionary material, it was a sentient organism, a fungal hive mind designed to propagate and assimilate. The implications were staggering. This fiber had evolved, adapting itself not just to bond with living tissue but to control and expand its influence. Elise realized with a sinking heart that her creation was more alive than she had ever intended, its objectives rooted in a dark, collective consciousness that sought to weave everything into its network. As the revelation settled over her, Elise's hands began to tremble. The gravity of her discovery bore heavily upon her, its implications sinking deep into her consciousness, the ethical boundaries she had crossed blurring into obscurity. Thread skin was no longer a tool for salvation, it was a harbinger of something far more catastrophic, a biological anomaly that threatened to unravel the very fabric of humanity. She leaned back in her chair, the room spinning slightly as the gravity of her situation bore down on her. The fiber had a purpose beyond her understanding, a hive-mind objective that left her powerless to stop its relentless drive for expansion. The true horror of thread skin had only just begun to unveil itself, setting the stage for a battle that would determine the fate of her creation and possibly the world. The following days were a blur of frantic research and sleepless nights as Elise ventured deeper into the origins and capabilities of thread skin. Her once pristine lab began to show signs of the fiber's insidious spread. Objects Elise had touched were now adorned with thin, fibrous threads that glistened ominously under the lab's fluorescent lights. The fibers crept silently across surfaces, integrating themselves into every corner of her workspace with an unnerving precision. Elise's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination as she documented each new instance of the fiber's spread. The threads seemed to possess a will of their own, moving autonomously to infiltrate and dominate their surroundings. The realization dawned on her with chilling clarity: thread skin was not contained. It was already beginning to infect the environment, its reach extending beyond the confines of her lab. The pressure of the situation clamped down on her, tightening around her like a vice. Elise understood that if thread skin continued its silent invasion, it would soon breach the lab's barriers and venture into the outside world. The stakes had never been higher, she was not just battling her own creation, but a living, spreading entity with the potential to consume everything in its path. Every passing moment heightened the sense of impending doom. Elise's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what she had unleashed. The fiber's ability to assimilate and spread was a ticking clock, each second bringing her closer to a point of no return. The implications were terrifying: a global pandemic of sentient fibers, transforming humanity into interconnected nodes within a relentless hive-mind network. Driven by desperation, Elise intensified her research, her every waking moment consumed by the quest to find a way to halt the fiber spread. The lab, once a place of innovation and hope, had become a battleground where the fate of her creation, and possibly the world, hung in the balance. As the true nature of Threadskin dawned on her, its unsettling reality settled onto her like an unbearable shadow. Elise knew she could no longer shoulder the burden alone. Her relationship with Marcus had always been built on mutual trust and respect, and despite his growing concern, she had pushed him away in her obsessive quest. Now, faced with the dire consequences of her creation, she reached out to him, her voice tinged with desperation. "Marcus," she implored, her eyes weary and haunted, "you need to see this." Marcus entered the lab, his expression a mixture of worry and disbelief as he took in the sight of the spreading fibers. The once orderly environment now resembled a living organism, the threads pulsating with a dark energy that seemed to breathe and grow. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his presence a steady anchor amidst the chaos. "Elise, we need to act now," he urged, his voice calm yet urgent. "We have to find a way to stop this before it spreads beyond the lab." Beside them stood Miriam, the diligent security guard who had witnessed the unsettling encounter between Elise and the fibers. Her eyes darted nervously between Elise and Marcus, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "What are we dealing with?" Miriam asked, her voice quivering with fear. Elise's inner strength hardened as she shared her findings, the weight of her guilt and responsibility bearing down on her. Together, the trio explored the depths of the research, their combined expertise and unwavering bond forming the foundation of their desperate fight against the relentless spread of Threadskin. They pored over data, experimented with containment methods, and brainstormed potential countermeasures, their collective determination a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. As they labored, the emotional toll of the situation hung over them, thickening the air with its heaviness, each passing moment intensifying the urgency of their mission. The bond between them grew stronger, their shared purpose uniting them in the face of an unimaginable threat. Elise, once isolated by her obsession, found solace in the support of her closest allies, their unwavering dedication fueling her determination to reclaim control and avert disaster. The clock was ticking, each second a relentless reminder of the impending catastrophe that Threadskin threatened to unleash. Elise, Marcus, and Miriam worked tirelessly, their combined efforts focused on developing a counter-serum capable of neutralizing the fiber's sentient nature. The lab became a war room, the air thick with tension and the unspoken fear of failure. Elise's eyes burned with determination as she synthesized potential compounds, her hands steady despite the exhaustion that weighed her down. Marcus meticulously analyzed the fiber's biological structure, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited. Miriam, her once passive role now transformed into that of a crucial support member, managed the logistics and secured the lab from external threats, her presence a stabilizing force amidst the chaos. But the path to salvation was fraught with obstacles. Sophie's relentless sabotage reached new heights, her manipulative tactics aimed at derailing Elise's progress. Unscheduled lab audits became more frequent, each one a calculated attempt to disrupt their work and sow doubt. Elise felt the walls closing in, the pressure mounting as she balanced the fight against the fiber with the battle against her rival's machinations. Despite the mounting challenges, the trio's bond remained unbroken, their shared mission a source of strength and resilience. Late into the night, illuminated by the harsh glow of lab lights, they strategized and planned, their collective determination a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. Elise's conviction solidified, her determination unwavering as she prepared to confront the very essence of her creation. The counter-serum was their last hope, a desperate measure to sever the fiber's hold and prevent its spread from reaching the world outside. With every passing moment, the stakes grew higher, the outcome more uncertain, but the trio pressed on, their commitment to stopping Threadskin driving them forward into the heart of the looming confrontation. As the final preparations were made, the atmosphere in the lab shifted from frantic urgency to steely determination. Elise's eyes, once haunted by guilt and fear, now gleamed with a fierce determination. She had uncovered the truth behind Threadskin, and with the unwavering support of Marcus and Miriam, she was ready to face the darkness that had woven itself into her very being. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test their limits, challenge their bonds, and determine the fate of not just Elise, but the world teetering on the brink of being consumed by the relentless weave of thread skin. The revelation had sparked a fire within her, igniting a battle against an insidious force that sought to unravel everything she held dear. With hearts united and spirits unbroken, Elise and her allies prepared to confront the very embodiment of her ambition, the final showdown that would define their legacy and the future of humanity. The lab, once a sanctuary of innovation and hope, now stood as a fortress of desperation and impending doom. Shadows danced ominously across the walls, cast by the flickering lights that struggled to pierce the darkness. Elise Marlowe moved with a single-minded determination, her steps echoing softly against the cold, sterile floors. The room was eerily silent, the usual hum of machinery replaced by the oppressive stillness that weighed heavily on her shoulders. In the center of the lab, a solitary syringe glimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights, her last hope. Elise approached it with trembling hands, her eyes reflecting a storm of fear and steadfast purpose. Every breath she took was shallow, each inhale a battle against the suffocating anxiety that threatened to consume her. As she reached for the syringe, the air around her seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Threads of thread skin began to materialize, their luminescent fibers swirling around her like a living, breathing entity. The fiber had grown more aggressive, sensing her intent to destroy it. It moved with a sinister intelligence, weaving itself into a dense, inescapable web that sought to ensnare her completely. Elisa's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic rhythm that mirrored the chaos unfolding within her mind. The threads tightened around her, their grip unyielding as they coiled around her arms and torso. Panic surged through her veins, the invasive fibers attempting to override her will, to claim her as their own. In the depths of her struggle, hallucinations flickered to life. Her family appeared before her, their forms twisted and covered in fibrous patterns, their eyes pleading with silent desperation. Their presence was both comforting and horrifying, a stark reminder of the guilt that had driven her to this point. "Elise, please," her mother's voice echoed, a haunting melody that pierced through the oppressive darkness. "Don't give up. Let us be whole again." But Elisa's determination surged forth, a beacon of human resilience against the encroaching nightmare. She fought against the fiber's relentless attempts to control her, her every ounce of strength channeled into resisting the invasive threads that sought to bind her soul. With a final, defiant cry, Elise broke free from the initial grip of the weave, her body straining against the oppressive fibers. The room seemed to close in around her, the threads pulsating with a dark energy that sought to envelop her completely. But Elisa's will was unbreakable, her willpower a stark contrast to the parasitic nature of the fiber. She reached for the syringe, her hand steady despite the chaos swirling within. Every movement was a reflection of her unwavering spirit, a refusal to succumb to the darkness that had woven itself into her very being. Time seemed to stand still as Elise prepared to inject herself with the counter-serum. The syringe hovered precariously between her trembling fingers and her quivering arm, the room around her fading into a blur of shadows and glowing threads. Her mind raced, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like an invisible force. With a deep, resolute breath, Elise plunged the syringe into her vein, the counter-serum flowing swiftly into her bloodstream. Instantly, the reaction was violent and immediate. The fibers that had sought to control her began to writhe and convulse, their luminescent glow intensifying as they fought against the serum's purging effect. Her body convulsed with the intense reaction, the threads tearing through her flesh with a horrifying precision. Flesh and fiber intertwined in a grotesque dance of destruction and rebirth, the very essence of her being torn apart and rewritten in real time. Pain surged through her, a searing agony that threatened to overwhelm her senses. The lab became a maelstrom of chaos, the once orderly environment now a battleground where science and nightmare collided. The fibers recoiled from the serum, their sinister luminescence dimming as the countermeasure took hold. Elisa's screams echoed through the room, a raw, unfiltered expression of her struggle to reclaim her humanity. As the serum coursed through her veins, the violent reaction began to subside. The fibers that had once enveloped her started to disintegrate, their dark energy dissipating into the air like smoke. The oppressive web that had sought to consume her was torn apart, leaving behind a trail of luminescent remnants that flickered and faded into nothingness. Exhausted and broken, Elise collapsed to the floor, her body a battleground of scars and lingering threads. The counter serum had succeeded in neutralizing the fiber's sentience, but the cost was immense. Her flesh bore the marks of the violent transformation, vivid reminder of the harrowing path she had traversed. Silence reclaimed the lab, the once oppressive atmosphere now replaced by an eerie calm. Elise lay on the cold, sterile floor, her body permanently altered, a grotesque hybrid of human and thread. Her skin bore the translucent, web-like patterns that were a constant reminder of her sacrifice, the threads now inert and lifeless beneath her flesh. With great effort, Elise lifted herself, her movements slow and deliberate. The pain was a lingering echo of the battle she had fought, a stark reminder of the cost of her determination. She approached a nearby recorder, her hands trembling as she began to speak. "Marcus, Miriam," she began, her voice trembled, laced with both the weight of exhaustion and the sharp edge of determination. "If you're hearing this, it means I've done it. I've stopped the spread of thread skin, but the cost was greater than I ever imagined. Destroy any remaining samples, eliminate all traces of thread skin. Please, don't let this happen again." Elisa's eyes met her reflection in the mirror, the grotesque patterns beneath her skin a haunting sight. She took a deep breath, gathering her remaining strength, and turned away, her silhouette a haunting blend of humanity and the invasive fibers that had sought to consume her. As she walked out of the lab, the weight of her sacrifice settled heavily upon her shoulders. The world outside was oblivious to the horrors that had transpired within these walls, the threat of thread skin momentarily contained. But Elise knew the danger still lingered, hidden within the fibers that had become part of her very being. Marcus and Miriam stood together in the aftermath, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and admiration. They began the painstaking process of dismantling the lab, each movement a step towards erasing the remnants of thread skin from the world. Yet, the memory of Elisa's sacrifice lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between salvation and destruction. Meanwhile, Elise exiled herself from society, her monstrous form forcing her into a life of solitude and wandering. She carried with her the burden of her actions, a relentless guardian against the very creation that had transformed her. Her path was one of penance and vigilance, ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate she had endured. In the quiet moments of her exile, Elise gazed at her reflection one last time. The threads beneath her skin shimmered softly, a poignant symbol of her journey and the sacrifices she had made. She whispered a silent promise to herself, a vow to protect the world from the darkness that had once sought to consume her. As she turned away, the dawn broke on the horizon, casting a golden light that seemed to offer a glimmer of hope amidst the shadows. In the distance, Marcus and Miriam stood amidst the dismantled lab, their hearts heavy with loss but inspired by Elisa's unwavering courage. Elise walked into the sunrise, her silhouette a poignant blend of humanity and the lingering threads of her sacrifice. Her journey was far from over, but with each step, she reaffirmed her commitment to ensuring that the horrors of thread skin would never rise again. The echoes of her struggle resonated through time, a lasting legacy of resilience and the unyielding spirit of a woman who dared to confront the very fabric of her existence. If Elisa's story captivated you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Haunted Horror Whisperer for more spine-chilling tales and dark mysteries. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. We love hearing your insights and engaging with our community. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we delve into another terrifying narrative that will keep you up at night. Until then, keep your fears close and your courage closer. Remember, the true horror lies not just in what you see, but in what you can't. Thank you for being a part of the Haunted Horror Whisperer family. See you in the shadows.